Right, let's take a look at some of this morning's front pages for now. The Times leading on Biden backing Israel's offences following the president's historic visits to Israel yesterday. The Sun splashes on a different angle from that trip with Biden's comment that it wasn't Israel that bombed the hospital in Gaza. And the Metro has gone for a totally different story, the sentencing of a people smuggler who was extradited from the United Kingdom.
Well, I'm delighted to say that writer and journalist James Bloodworth and broadcaster Emma Woolf are with us for a look through this morning's papers. Good morning, both.
Morning, gang.
Morning.
Let's kick off with James. You've got the front page of the Mail.
Yes, so the Israeli president has blasted the quote-unquote atrocious BBC over its coverage of Hamas. So this is essentially, the BBC won't say that Hamas are a terrorist group. They say that it's part of, this is the vocabulary they use with these groups. But there is, a lot of people are angry about it because there seems to be this hypocrisy. So in the past, the BBC has had no problem calling ISIS terrorists when they've attacked Paris, for example. And it seems to be that only when a group attacks Israel, the BBC will not call them terrorists. It says, Hamas was elected, even though this was in 2006, they haven't held an election since. So, I mean, it does leave a bit of a bad taste in the mouth. I think I'm not very sympathetic generally to Benjamin Netanyahu, but I think he has kind of a point here.
I have to say that of all the stories, Em, and you would back me up on this, Nick, that we've done, this really gets people. The comment is, and this will surprise you, Sunak was quick, Sir Keir Starmer was as quick. The King and the future King were quick. It's just, I think because it's the national broadcaster, I think because people pay their money, I think they're really, really hacked off about this. And every time we talk about it, people's opinions come raining through.
They do, and I'm slightly baffled because I just think this is an irrelevance. I really think this is an irrelevance. When you are, grieving your family, when you're the parents of a murdered baby, are you worried about what the UK's national broadcaster, whether they're using the term terrorist or whether they're using another word? I think what happens at the BBC is they don't come out and say something. They're terrified of showing...
With the greatest respect, Emma Woolf, the other day, and we were on this show, when that lone gunman killed 2 people in Brussels, do you know this? The BBC tweeted straight away and called it terrorism and then took it down. I'm with James, absolutely. To me, it smacks of the BBC trying to be different for a reason that doesn't make sense.
I think they make bad decisions and then they don't correct the decision quickly enough. Yeah. They don't act quickly enough. They get into a panic. They're obsessed. They're paranoid about trying to be impartial. They're no more impartial than any other broadcaster. And then they double down, and then they don't know what to do. We've seen it again and again and again with scandals over the years. Yeah. They get themselves into a pickle. I don't think that they actually don't think that Hamas are terrorists. I think they've got themselves into a mess.
I agree.
And I hate the fact that we're even talking about it, because what we should be talking about it
is the deaths that are going on in
these babies across both regions.
Yeah, the word militants they're using is almost a bit euphemistic. I mean,
exactly.
You had on these attacks in Israel, you had films of women being disemboweled by members of Hamas, babies being burned and killed. And we can't call them terrorists. I mean,
it's beyond me, James.
It's ridiculous.
Do you not think, I'm totally with you, Emma, because...
But we're obsessing about the word again.
We're obsessing over the word rather than the
specific
There's
word.
a bit of context that he's talking about. You say
no,
that
it's because the BBC won't use that word that you're all obsessing about it.
Yeah. No, what I'm saying to you is... if that was... You say they don't know what they're doing. I believe that they set out to be so many things to so many people that they don't end up being anything to anybody. And when, as James Bloodworth quite rightly says, when it's there in black and white, why not be as everybody else is being, right?
Good, but let's be just as passionate and angry and outraged at what is going on to
I agree.
People.
Let's get a sense of perspective, because this is life and death.
Em, you've got the Telegraph, front page and page 9 about the King. What's this story?
Yeah, well, he was talking at the Mansion House in the city last night, just across the road from us here. And I'm no royalist, but I think this was a really important, a very lovely, a very regal speech from King Charles. He talks about the need at this difficult time. He calls Hamas terrorists, which will make you happy. He calls Hamas terrorists. He talks about being appalled at the attacks on Israel. But he also asks for compassion. He talks about the importance at this terribly dark time of uniting rather than dividing. He calls the UK a community of communities, which is interesting. But he really does talk about the heightened tensions with the protests happening at the moment in our country as well. Yeah. And I think this is what a king should be. I'm so proud that he is able to come out and call them terrorists, that he is able to talk about feeling, appalled at the attacks.
Why are you proud that he'll call it, but not bothered if the the BBC don't?
You can be proud that someone's done something.
I'm not bothered.
And you
I
can
want to be proud that the BBC, our
not
state
really bothered about
broadcaster,
the
gets
BBC.
in line. But that's all I'm saying. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I do, and I get the importance. I think that he's
what I mean.
brave.
I
In
just
the
think-
controversy, I think he's brave to just...
It's good. It's good.
But
Good
Jez,
leadership.
Spade.
how... Honestly, speaking honestly here, we can
Yep.
think whatever we like about the BBC, and it's all very, very valid. They pussyfoot around a lot of things. However, what privilege do we have in this country that we can busy ourselves over the use of a word, rather than...
But the point I'm
actual
making is
threat.
that
A
he
dozen
stood
grieving
there.
mother doesn't even know that word, doesn't even know whether we're
all right.
using
Do you think
the word
someone in
attack
Israel
or
gives a
terrorism or,
damn?
come on.
Royalist, happy that he's leading?
I mean, I'm not a royalist. I think he's right about not letting social media, the rancor you see on social media, divide us. I think one of the things with social media is you come into contact with all kinds of views that before social media you didn't. So the kind of the opposition, if you like, is almost represented by the worst kinds of people when you just look at it on social media. So you think, you know, if you're on the left, you think all the people on the right think
And it's
this.
an anonymous space.
It's very extreme stuff.
It's an anonymous space. You can fling all sorts of unbelievable vitriol at people. You don't see them as a person.
And the most
Interesting
extreme
what-
people make the most noise.
It's interesting what you said about social media. We talked about this yesterday in some detail, didn't we? I mean, everybody's using social media, and certainly that attack on the hospital, we still don't know what the truth is. There are rumours overnight that it was just the car park, and you don't know what to believe.
know.
So actually, when somebody like King Charles, who, you know, people might not be royalists, but many people are, that's leadership, which is a good thing.
just-
That's what I mean.
Just 2 weeks ago, we had Home Secretary Suella Braverman saying multiculturalism has failed in the UK. And then you've got King Charles saying the UK is a community of communities. We should be proud. He's the most British you can get. And his mother was the same. We should be very proud of our rich heritage, our diversity within the UK. And then to have the Home Secretary to say multiculturalism
Don't give
has
Suella
failed.
a hard time. It's only 6:30.
I'm not giving her a hard time.
joking.
Hey, I'm just getting caught up on words.
Now, listen, you will understand this next story in the Times, because I don't know if you two upstairs in your lovely room saw this, but she nicked her jacket from Zara and had to take it back. The theft of 2,000 objects from
saw
the
the
British
tag.
Museum, James.
She's bleeping around.
Yeah, terrible attitude.
changed
Have you been to the British Museum and nicked some artefacts as
No,
well?
I'd only be nicking them back because they nicked him in the first place.
Oh, God. Jay, what you
James.
got?
Yeah, so, I mean, the theft of 2,000 objects from the British Museum has, according to George Osborne, who seems to get everywhere. I thought he was editing the Evening Standard still. But he said it's got the makings of a good exhibition in itself. I kind of agree with that. But it would also be interesting to hear, alongside that, the story of how these objects were stolen in the first place. I think that's got that kind
the
of
first
mystery
place?
element to it.
When the British Museum stole them, arguably, from their
Elgin
original...
marbles.
Yeah, exactly.
The Elgin marbles.
You're losing your Elgins.
There is a section in this story where George Osborne talks about potentially lending the Parthenon marbles back to Greece, but then would they give them back?
Good luck getting
And
them back.
Another missing item.
FedEx. Good. Now, Emma, we're going to do this, and Madam on my left, the tea leaf's going to kick off.
Oh, you're going to presume what I think, are you, Jeremy?
Well, it's not difficult to ascertain. Page 17 of the Mail. JK Rowling, explain to me in basic layperson's terms. I'm learning.
JK Rowling is a famous, Harry
I
Potter
know who
author.
yes, I know.
She is a famous, I'm telling everybody else.
All right, then.
She's a famous opponent of gender ideology. She's really, really stood up for, the fact that women are women, and she says trans women are not women. That's her thing. And she's now saying she will happily do a spell in the clink if Labour bring in this hate law, the new hate law, a hate crime, to call someone by the wrong pronouns. She says, no, that's fine, I'll do 2 years in prison if they make me use incorrect language. She says it's a forced denial of reality and the importance of sex.
So I was talking to Mike Graham about this yesterday. I mean, it's quite extraordinary, actually, because after 13 years of Tory rule, even I believe that the Labour Party has some stuff to offer, and I genuinely mean that.
Scary.
But to honestly say that if you say they and he or she or it or whatever, and you could go to jail, when we're talking about the things in the wider world, is that really good? Does that make sense,
Ludicrous. It's
Emma
ludicrous.
Woolf?
And it's very, very... It's very confusing. I was recently doing a programme with someone who was trans, and I was genuinely getting quite distressed and anxious about calling them by the right pronoun. And that's not me ridiculing any decision of them. I just wanted to get it right. It was an Anyway, I'm not going to go into it.
So,
calling it he or she. Anyway, for this to become a hate crime is ludicrous.
OK, so just to break this story down, Labour aren't saying if you call somebody by the wrong pronouns, you will go to jail for 2 years. That's not what's happening.
What's happening
We
then?
have existing hate crime laws.
We already have
Do you
that
think
law.
it's a hate crime to
the
get some...
EU.
They
Can we cut to
want to
chase?
strengthen that law.
We're not set. I don't think it is a hate crime to call someone by the wrong pronouns. I think what could be a hate crime, you have to, for a hate crime to take place, you have to also commit a crime and for it to be motivated by hate. So if you're committing a crime or you're harassing somebody...
But isn't the essence of this story, actually, and I agree, isn't the essence that people like Emma, Jay, right, are so terrified because of the way that this is treated to not know what the hell to say?
You don't need to be terrified because, yes, I understand the mob online can be so toxic.
Yeah.
However, all the non-binary, all of the trans people that I know, if you accidentally use the wrong pronoun, they'd be fine with it. Just like if someone was to call a married woman who was then divorced by her previous,
Is it a hate crime
married
to call
name.
you a tea leaf? Because you stole your jacket. Do you understand that people will read this and they'll think, my God, we can't do anything, we can't say anything.
Because that's what this is what they want you to think.
I think
deliberately
there's definitely an issue with hate crime legislation more generally. I think we need a First Amendment in this country. I think that free speech. You do see examples of people who tell jokes on Twitter, then have the police turning up at their house. Personally, I respect people's pronouns. It's about etiquette. It's about politeness. But then, of course, I think it's ludicrous the idea that someone could go to jail, although I don't think that's even going to be on the cards
It's
anyway.
not. It's a
I just
misinterpretation
think we're making
of the
the
truth.
relations between men and women so fraught and so difficult and so troublesome. And you know, people are growing up and they don't know how to relate to each other. And I think children are very confused. I have a friend who's bringing up a child as gender neutral. That poor child doesn't know what they are, and they're 3 years old.
But is that because of trans people and non-binary people, or is it because of stories like this that would have you believe that you're going to go to jail for 2 years if you accidentally say he instead of
How
she?
does a child of 3 not know what did you just say to me?
A child that I know is being brought up as gender neutral.
Being brought up as. So it's being told by its parents that it doesn't have to decide what it is. This is why I can't... See, this is why I can't get involved in this debate. Really?
It's a they, and I feel that is...
They're telling the child it's a they. And that's not forcing an ideology on a kid.
Gender neutral.
That's ludicrous. That's half the problem. And I take your point,
That's
actually.
gender neutral, not non-binary.
No, but do you think that's right for parents to push that on a kid?
So gender neutral, but I would say that
Do you think it's right for them to
But what
push
is
that on a
it?
kid?
Push what on a kid?
Deeply confusing.
But that's
not
sex
for a
neutral,
child.
not gender. Like you
for a child not to know whether they are male or female.
That's non-binary.
One at a time.
That's not gender neutral. That's non-binary. Because I would say, for example, I'm having a girl, and she will be brought up as a girl, and I will call her a girl. But I would also want to do gender neutral parenting, which means I'm not just going to give her Barbie dolls. She'll be able to play with, you know, all sorts of different
Nicola,
toys.
let me just tell you,
Let
me just tell you, she will gravitate towards dollies and playhouses. No, she will. Because I was the same. I brought up my little boy to be completely gender neutral. And do you know what he loves? Tractors and trains and smashing things up and blue and running out in the playground.
So
and I look over the other side of the room.
Who's raising their child to fit into a gender stereotype?
No, you've misunderstood. I'm literally saying I brought him up to have either dollies or whatever, pink or blue, and you will find that your child will gravitate towards
and that's
pink
absolutely
and
fine.
dollies.
And that is absolutely fine. Whatever she gravitates towards is great.
I was told that Oliver wore a dress at nursery.
And how did you react to that?
They all
not well,
do.
Why did you not react to that well?
What?
What's wrong with a boy wearing a dress?
I'm allowed as a parent to have an opinion. Let's get this into an even better
Who's
context.
raising their child
At
into a gender
6:35, she said to me, "Do you want me to tell them what you said off air?"
Oh God, I've said so many things off air. What?
You said, Nikesh and I were talking the other night, what if she grows up and she's a Tory?
Oh,
That's
Could
more
not
worrying.
wish for something more than Nicola Thorpe's child to grow up and go, Mummy, I hate all you socialists.
she can vote however she likes.
OK, then.
Just
Good.
like anybody
It's a good
else.
debate, though, isn't it? I take your point.
Yes,
Let them
it is a
decide
good-
for
Let them wear a
themselves.
dress. It really doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sex neutral thing, I get you. I get where you're coming from on that, but I think it's good not to bring children up to be like, you must like this or you must like that.
Of course not.
Finally, where are we going? Are we going to the Guardian
You
or the
can go
Telegraph?
wherever you want. Where do you want to go?
Emma, right. Guardian. PG-13, it says here. I presume that means page.
13. This is a weird story. So we got this Millennium Bridge, the wobbly bridge that Londoners call it, which
close to here.
Yeah, a bit of a troubled bridge, really. Anyway, I thought it was only built a few years ago, but it just shows how ancient I am. It needs repairs. It's falling apart, so they have to hang a bale of straw off the bridge. It's an ancient bylaw. You have to hang a bale of straw to warn oncoming boats of the work going on underneath.
Sorry. It's 2023, where apparently all kids are going to be brought up with a dolly and a dress and a tractor. And to let somebody know, coming down the Thames, that a bridge could fall on their head, you have to hang a bale of straw.
Jeremy, it must be a bundle of straw large enough to be conspicuous, and by night, a white light.
I think you deserve an award for the best story that we've ever had from the papers.
Very odd.
Yes.
That is incredible. We need a bale of hay in here.
I've had the Metropolitan Police on.
Oh, God. Because of my
The
theft.
tea leaf's in trouble. Listen, gang, fantastic.
Thank you so much, James and Emma. They will be back in just under an hour.